Today we have Jon Mone. He is one of the most wonderful producers I've ever worked with, and I've worked with probably around 50 to 100 producers. That's just, I've actually worked with far more than that, but I mean actual producers I've worked
Had
with.
a relationship with.
Right,
rather
that's
than
what I was,
just
thank
like
you,
we
had
worked.
a relationship. Because you look at a movie and there's 15 producers sometimes, you know?
Yep.
And most of them I didn't work with, you know, you never even meet, you know?
Yeah, a lot of them don't see the set,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
And John was the producer on King Richard and Emancipation. And what else did we work on? Did we work on anything else?
Bad Boys 4.
Bad Boys
Oh, yeah.
4? Did
Yeah.
Bad Boys 3 too?
I was just there for the very tail end, giving notes on the reshoots, but I showed up with months ago before the movie came out.
Right,
Is when I started. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you would have really met on King Richard.
Yes, King Richard was our real time, our bonding time,
Oh,
where I got
it
to see
was-
the magic
it
that,
was-
that Coach and Kay do, and yeah, it was such an awesome experience, obviously for us.
It really was a magical,
creatively,
yeah.
and with the weird COVID pause in the middle, but coming back stronger and getting it done anyway, and
Yes.
it was special, and it was the type of performance that required your guidance, right? It was a performance movie, and obviously you guys did amazing work, and so did Will, and
Everyone,
It
that,
showed.
and the reason we're talking about this is that most people have no idea what the level of collaboration that goes on. They really think that, oh, the director does everything or the producer does everything. And
Yeah, people like to give credit to different parties for they were the one that made it happen.
Yes.
And that's just frankly impossible.
yes.
You might say like, oh, this person has a more visible part of it, but to put the credit or the blame on any certain person's shoulders is not really deeply understanding how deeply collaborative this industry is.
100%. I mean, I see that a lot with people talk about an actor's performance, and
man.
they credit they credit the actor with some of the work the writer did.
Right.
Right.
That's
like
right.
that actor is so smart and funny and witty, and like yes, they definitely probably are, but they had a script that some really smart witty person handed them, right?
so true.
Acknowledging that their brilliant dialogue, they didn't just come up with it on the fly that day. They had some partners.
but they believe it.
Yeah. Yes.
It's such
No,
a powerful illusion, right?
Yes.
A lot of times when I read in the newspapers, they'll say, Marlon Brando said blah, blah, blah. No, it was Tennessee Williams that said blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
So really, it was
Yes.
him.
Yes.
And then,
And it came out of Marlon Brando's mouth,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we credit him with that. But it is, we're all standing on the shoulders of the person that is also creating next to us. And it's so interesting, even when you think about King Richard, because King Richard, I know, I wasn't there when you guys were in the process of being in the room, like in the pre-production process, but Aaron would come home every day and tell me like, this is happening and this is how we're changing things. And, this guy had a great idea and the writer had a great idea. And then Ingenue had a great idea, like
Yes.
there were so many voices that contributed to that script. And I think that's also part of what made it so great. Will wanted input.
Big time. And he got it from the Williams family. He got it from our director, from our writer, from his fellow actors. And also I'm sure you remember, he had us dig up all the, as much interviews as we could find from
Videos.
Richard Williams and videos.
Yes.
And he wasn't looking to like copy him, but he wanted to understand how Richard Williams thought and spoke and get that little affectation of an accent right, and take that on. And like, it was really important to Will to go deep into that and honor the guy, you know?
yes. And he did something that is very rare usually. I've worked on a lot of movies. Very rare. He got everyone in the room, the writer who won an Academy Award for, I believe,
Nominated, yeah.
Right, nominated,
Yeah.
right,
Nominated.
right. And the director and the producers, a couple of the producers, or there was Tim and
Trevor White. Yep.
you,
Yep.
and Will, and they started tracking. Do you remember tracking each character's journey?
Yep.
And finding out where there were holes or problems. And then the writer would continue rewriting every day, come in. The script was fantastic by the end of that process. A very unusual process.
It was. But that technique of, kind of tracking the character lines is something you should apply to every movie. You know, King Richard was so important because it's such a character-driven movie, but we do try to apply that to every single script we develop because it's an easy blind spot to kind of not recognize. You know, you focus on the hero a lot of times, and you kind of forget everybody else, right?
Right, it's their movie.
Yeah, so it's so important to you know, one of the kind of litmus tests we like to play with is like, okay, it's not the hero's movie, it's the villain's movie. It's the best friend's movie. It's the and let's pretend the movie was told from their perspective. What's their story, right?
Right.
Because you could have told King Richard from the perspective, of course, of the two young girls. Definitely from Ingenue's character. You could have told it from the coach's perspective. You could have told it from the dad's perspective, which is what we ended up doing.
Right.
But if you do that test and you say, okay, if this is Ingenue's movie, what's her journey? What does she want? What's holding her back? What's her victory at the end of this story, right?
Right.
And her story, as we know, was really cool. It was, I got this crazy husband who's crazy like a fox, you know, like he's a blazing, you know, brilliant guy, but he's also a wild card.
Yeah.
And she had to keep it together.
Yes.
Like had to clean up his messes and, you know, keep him on the rails.
Yeah, hold the family together as
Right?
well. Yeah.
So she's like the voice of reason in the movie. She's the anchor of the movie. She's the mature one in the relationship. And there's a critical scene in the movie where that all comes out in the kitchen when they have the kitchen fight.
Right.
Yeah.
That was an awesome lesson for all of us that day. I don't know if you remember what happened, but whole movie's going smoothly.
Yeah.
And we showed up on that set and production design had missed some like modern equipment in the kitchen of the house that we had rented. You know, the movie takes place in the mid '90s, but there was like a 2000s fridge or whatever. You know, and so we walked into the scene, and Will, of course, is like, "Wait, that's not period authentic," and everybody's like, "Oh shit, what do we do?" So we had to move the camera around in the set to kind of avoid some of these non-authentic period things. And in doing that, we ended up like missing the proper coverage, and so halfway through the day, Will and Ingenue realized our coverage angles were off. And they had to redo it. And it was the biggest disaster of the day we had. Like the set's wrong, the coverage is wrong. We ended up having to reshoot the scene halfway through the day, which meant we weren't going to be able to get the next scene we wanted to shoot that day
On the
stairs,
stairway, right?
which is when Richard tells Serena that it's someday it's going to be her turn.
Which they moved on to the tennis court.
So we spent the whole day shooting the kitchen scene by mistake, and we were like, it's gonna be a bad scene,
Right.
And we loved the Serena moment, but now we got nowhere to put it.
Right.
So what crazy happened is it ended up being one of our best scenes creatively because Will and Ingenue, in the redoing it, had time to really get under the hood of that argument they have and really capture what they were trying to do there.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Right.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and it forced us to push the Serena moment to the stadium, which is, of course, where it should be. And we didn't know that until we were backed into the corner where we said, well, we still have this awesome Serena scene. We've run out of sets. All we have left now is the big tennis environment.
Yeah.
And I don't know who, I can't take credit for it, but there was the eureka moment, which is, wait, he should have the Serena talk on the courts with her staring at an empty court with a huge stadium, feeling the weight of what her destiny might be. That's the moment where dad needs to say, it's going to be your time next.
That's the collaboration that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Someone had to realize there was a mistake, and that's where the producer comes in.
Yep.
Because now that there's a terrible mistake, what do, right?
Yeah.
You could have said, no, we're going to have to leave it. Some people would, right? So, and then somehow you guys all got together, meaning the producers, because there was a few of them. There was probably 4 or 5 of them.
Lynn Harris and Tim and Trevor.
Right.
And yeah, there's a whole squad of really good producers there. Yeah.
And said, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to do this another time.
And if you lose that
we're not
scene,
going to give that up.
Right.
Yeah.
If you lose that scene, suddenly you miss the end of her character arc.
Yes.
You don't get that forward movement of like, what is the future for her? She just sort of fades into the background without that moment. It's also one of the most moving moments. I started weeping.
Of course.
Because it's daddy and daughter, and it's just so powerfully emotional for...
With the powerful thing of this empty stadium.
It was shot on a staircase, the original version, the shitty version.
I remember.
We tried to squeeze it
there.
in. We had an hour left in that night in the kitchen scene, and we said, well, we better just try and get it since we're here. And it was an awful scene, and it was an awful environment because you were so jammed. You had like 6 feet of space between the camera and the wall.
No room for
and
anybody.
so it's like bad flat background, rushed performance, everything wrong. It was the best thing ever happened to us.
Yeah.
That's where the producers come in to have the bravery to say, like, this is not going to work. We'll make it work later.
Yeah. We always loved that scene, to your point, Kay, and we wanted to protect it. And it, like, at least we knew that. We knew, like, we're not letting it die. Like, we will find a way. If we have to beg for more days, we'll figure it out. Luckily, we were able to squeeze it into that environment we ended up in. But, like, we had kind of vowed we're not letting that one go away, no matter what.
May I add to this what you're saying? He said, John said, beg for more days. There's a budget. And that's what John's talking. No, a lot of people don't understand when you say. They would say, "What do you mean beg for more days?
Right.
Just get more money.
Right.
Just get more money and do it."
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work like that. You can sometimes get more money, and an example is on the same shoot. They originally had planned to go south and shoot in Shreveport, I believe.
Yeah.
Where he was
Where he says
born.
goodbye to his mom,
Right.
at
And
his
his
mom's
mom,
grave, and the whole thing. Yeah.
All that was in there, remember?
Yep.
They had to cut that all that.
Yes, for budget.
Budget.
And it was the right and it's funny because I think filmmakers, producers, directors, actors, like, left to our own devices, we would take as many days as you'll give us. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like
You're
as
like,
much
you're going to
money.
give me 500 days to shoot this? I'll shoot it
We
in
can do that.
500.
Yeah, and all the cranes and all the drones and all the cool, like, give us all. But we don't actually do our best work when we have unlimited resources. Like, you know, being forced to be creative and put the Serena scene on the courts where we already were shooting was an efficiency. And it was also the best it could have ever been. And if Warner Brothers had just said, no, here's another, you know, $1 million for a couple more days, we would have tried to stage it elsewhere, and it probably would have been inferior.
It would have been inferior.
So money and days actually wouldn't have helped us out of that situation. What it required was creative adaptability, you know, being, and that's why you see a lot of great filmmakers make some of their best work when they're still scrappy. And when they get bloated budgets, they maybe don't do their best work.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about the pressure of having to rely on your storytelling instead of just more gack, you know?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the more money is not necessarily going to lead to a better product, because now you've got your dream list, but you're not thinking creatively on the point of view of, like, oh, this is not going to work. Why don't we try something else that will do the same thing, fulfill the same story beat without the big thing.
And that's what we're talking about, a great producer, depending creative producer. The great producer is going to think on their feet and make it work.
And the great directors and producers together need to do that, right? And yes, and that's the, like, one of the other things that we learned. We had another movie where we kind of had a last minute requirement to cut a big chunk of the budget, and we were all mad about it. How dare they make us cut our budget and blah blah blah. But we rolled our sleeves up and we said, okay, if we had to squeeze this movie into that smaller box, how do you do it? And the movie got better for it, because what also it required you to do was kind of acknowledge what really mattered in the movie, and focus on what really mattered, and maybe some of these tangential ideas were just an indulgence and maybe even a distraction, right? So when the studio forces you to cut the budget, it forces you to decide what really matters.
Yeah.
And it means the distractions fall away.
Yeah.
And you start to get really precise about why you're here and what you're trying to do.
I love that.
Right?
And I want to be clear, it's not the studio's fault. The studio's putting up an insane amount of money. Insane.
And it's all their risk.
It is their risk. That's right.
Somehow people think that, well, if the studio loses all this money, it's not a big deal. What are you talking about? It's $100 million.
Major deal.
Yeah, it's not your money. And so you have to take the responsibility of that seriously.
But let's now get to, that's what one of the things a producer does.
Yeah. But, and by the way, before we move on,
go ahead.
If there are any studio executives listening, we still want more money. So
give us more.
Who doesn't want more money, better craft service.
Yeah, you know. Maybe we shoot in London instead of Albuquerque. You know, let's figure it out.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Shoot in London. Put me on this show, man.
Like maybe even Hawaii. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
Depending on what the story wants.
Right.
I always say that. Why are they not shooting in Hawaii? This is like much more fun for
I know.
everyone.
Somebody was saying like, why did George Clooney and Julia Roberts do that movie Ticket to Paradise? And I was like, I think maybe because it was shot in Bali and they could take their entire family there,
Yeah.
and it would be fun to shoot with those people. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you really have to think about like these are people who would actually enjoy shooting on a tropical island for a couple
Yeah.
of months. Like
Oh, yeah.
that sounds nice.
It
I would
is.
not be opposed to that.
Nobody wants to admit that, but it's real.
Yeah.
If you stage a movie somewhere like that, the talent reading it are just a little bit more open, right? And vice versa. If you
Yeah.
know, no disrespect to Detroit in the winter,
No.
but if that's what they're signing up for,
No
they
disrespect.
better love that script.
If
and they
you've
better
been in
love that
Detroit
director.
in the winter, I have.
Right?
I've shot
I have,
Detroit
yeah.
in the winter.
Toronto in the winter.
Terrible.
You know, it's or
Suicide Squad.
or
We
New
shot-
Orleans in the summer. for
We
that matter.
shot.
Right.
Yeah, we'll
We
get
did.
to that. We
Yeah.
shot
That was
Suicide
special.
Squad in Toronto in the winter
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
night.
brutal.
Yeah.
10 minutes, your hands are frozen.
That's when you need that Canada Goose
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
You know, those big puffy coats. It's
Oh, yeah.
freezing.
Yeah, you need the top to bottom. You're like on the moon.
Let's talk more about you and producing and because it's so interesting, your journey.
Wait, I have a quick
ahead,
question
yeah,
because
yeah.
I really want to know.
And we'll come back to
I-
Richard too
I
more.
see on your IMDb that you worked as an actor on Something About Mary.
Okay, no,
I need to know.
Yeah, that's a good because I guess to explain how I got here, that's a big piece of it.
Okay.
So basically, I grew up in New England.
Yeah.
There's no Hollywood culture or anything out there. So like, the idea of being in Hollywood is just like a joke out there. You know, it's much more grounded. You know, you go to school for law or finance. Or
Finance.
medicine or
Yeah,
you know
business.
the kind of classic stuff. And so anything kind of dreamy and arty like Hollywood just is a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
Typically the way it's
Yeah.
received out there. So that's how I was raised. But I love movies, and I grew up on an island, Martha's Vineyard, as a townie, not as a fancy guy. So like it was just basically long, cold winters, playing a lot of sports, watching a lot of movies.
Right.
There was no mall, there was no entertainment other than outdoors, sports, and
Yeah, you
and
might as well have grown up in
VHS
Iowa,
tapes down
frankly.
the street. Yeah. So like a very small, 100,000 in the summer and 10,000 in the winter kind of a
Totally.
thing. So watching movies really kept you going.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about Hollywood, but I knew I loved movies, commercial movies. I wasn't like fancy into art films.
Fellini.
Yeah, I was into like every Bill Murray movie, every
Antonioni.
Chevy Chase
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
every Freddy Krueger,
Those are great.
Aliens,
Who
Top
didn't love
Gun,
those?
the
Commercial.
big, the robust
Yeah.
action comedy horror commercial.
We were
films.
kids. We
Yeah.
all loved it.
Yeah, I was like a down the middle audience member
Yeah.
for Hollywood, right? Like I just loved the big stuff and the fun
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, didn't know anything about the business. Went to college in Vermont, studied English literature, which is kind of a bit of a dead end major, unless you want to be a lawyer or a teacher or kind of
writer,
those things. And,
yeah.
and those are awesome professions, and that's kind of where I thought I was headed.
Yeah.
Got into law school, deferred for a year because I didn't want to go straight from undergraduate to law school. So now I'm looking down the barrel of like I have a year before I got to go back to law school.
Yeah. What do you want to do with that year? It's so interesting that you chose to defer.
Yes.
Was that just you wanted more life experience or what?
No, it was literally like panic and backing into a corner. Okay, so basically I'm an English major. What am
Panic
I going
is
to do?
good. Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
I better go to law school. So I applied to law schools and I got into one.
You mean nothing
it.
had to do with being a virgin at that point? No, it's just law. And
Well, no, and by the way, we had like a family friend who like helped me get in. It was the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
was one
yeah.
of those situations where like I think deep down I was like hoping to not get into law school, so I could be like, well, I tried, Dad, And all of a sudden they're like, you're in.
Yeah.
So it's like Georgetown Law.
Oh, my God. That's a
I
great
got to
law
move to
school.
DC and study law, and I wasn't excited about that, but it just seemed like the responsible thing to do.
you're a surfer dude.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Exactly.
I know.
That's my
You're
natural
good.
state. So that was all happening, and then not to be a bummer, but like that winter, my younger brother died in a car accident. Classic driving on New Year's Eve
Yeah.
kind of accident. So that was kind of a shock to me in my senior year, winter senior year. So I got a semester left, and I'm going to law school. And so the combination of not wanting to go and my brother passing, I was like, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to move to LA and enjoy the sun and the surf. And I got a good buddy I grew up with who's trying to be an actor, and he's got a place I can crash. So I'm just going to take a year off and just get a break from the East Coast and the cold and the studying and the shit that I was going through, right?
Yeah.
So came out here, and my dad.
How old were you?
I was 21, and my
21
dad
in California.
Yeah, and my dad grew up with the Farrelly brothers back in New England. And so I remember in 1994, as a senior in high school, Dumb and Dumber came out, and we went to the theater in the Vineyard, and I was like doubled over in my seat. I was like, this is the best movie I've ever seen.
Brilliant. Oh my God,
yes.
Dumb and Dumber.
And then right when my brother passed, senior year of college, 1998, they were making something about Mary. And to distract us from that moment, they invited us down to Miami for 2 weeks in February, like a month after it happened. And they put us up and basically just like, hey, you get to watch this. So I got to see a movie getting made in Miami with, you know, Cameron Diaz and Matt Dillon, and it was like, it was really cool.
Great filmmakers.
So that was my first like exposure to filmmaking, because my dad's buddies ended up becoming, you know, meaningful filmmakers.
Yeah.
And so we sat on set for 2 weeks, and they threw me in as an extra.
Great.
Right? You know, the comic book kid. I basically, like, I had to walk out of a building to open the door so Ben Stiller could walk through the door behind me.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
And they like gave me a credit just because they're friends. And,
Yeah, of course.
and it didn't deserve a credit, but it, you know, I got a credit.
Yeah, it's cute. It's nice.
Yes. And they dedicated, if you see the movie, they dedicated, that movie is dedicated to my brother.
No.
At the end of the movie, it says dedicated to Ryan Mone from West Isbury, Massachusetts. And
I didn't know that.
yeah. So that movie, of course, went on to become a huge hit.
Huge.
And Peter Farrelly and Bobby Farrelly were represented by Richard Levitt. And so when I moved to LA, they called and said, hey, will you give this kid a job in your mailroom while he takes a year off before going to law school? And so that was my introduction to the business. So I kind of had that like foot in the door and showed up there, didn't know anything about it. Literally thought CAA stood for California Agents Association. For real.
CAA is one of the biggest agencies in the world. That's what
I just love, it's so great, like the moments of true ignorance. It's like you really don't know anything.
I also think I
Love
showed
it.
up
It's
in like
delicious.
inappropriate outfit, like,
Of course.
like t-shirt and shorts or something,
Yeah.
and everybody's wearing suits, you know.
Surfer dude.
And I'm meeting with Richard Levitt. Don't know who he is yet.
Right.
Don't apprate that I'm across from a legend, right?
Yes.
It's just like my dad's buddy's guy who said he'd give me a job at the weird Agents Association or something. So end up, you know, doing the job, and that was the crash course of like what Hollywood actually does. And to your point about like navigating it, that was the like, oh, this is what producers do. This is what studio executives do. This is how movies get made. Because there's no better place than an agency to learn that, because it's the hub of everything.
Yeah. Right.
Everything passes
The deals,
through the agencies.
everything.
Right?
Yep.
All the movies have to pass through the agencies. So it gives you this like really cool 30,000 foot view of the business. And so within 3 months, I was like, okay, I'm doing this now. I called my parents, canceled law school.
Yeah.
They were cool about it, thank God.
Yeah.
And then just kind of rode out those first couple of years in the CA training program, and started to get my bearings and started to understand what the various categories did, and knew I was never going to be an actor.
Right.
But also knew I didn't want to be an agent after I kind of started to wrap my head around what that was.
You have tremendous knowledge in terms of like writing, in terms of putting things together. I sat in the room with you. I watched what you did.
Well, so being an English major, as it turns out, really translates well to
totally.
being a development executive.
Right.
And so I didn't know that, but when at CA, one of the things they would do in the training program is they would say, okay, all you guys got to do coverage. So you're all going to read a script and you're all going to write coverage. And
Coverage, you have to define it.
Coverage. So basically, coverage is the Cliff's Notes for a script. You know, it's you
read the script and then you write a short thing.
You write out, it's essentially a summary and comments, right? So like if someone asked you to do coverage in a script, you'd read the script. The first thing you do is you would describe it in a page or two, the details of the story.
Right.
And that allows the person reading the coverage to read the script, air quotes, in 2 minutes instead of an hour.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
so coverage is a
because
very
there's thousands
valuable
of
tool, especially for like very high level studio executives and producers who are getting thousands of scripts.
Right.
The ability to just grab that coverage and at least read the summary, that'll tell you like if it's worth digging into the real thing, right?
Right.
Because you can read the coverage and go, I'm just never making this kind of movie, so I'm not even
Yeah.
going to bother reading the script, right?
Right.
And that's a good efficiency if you can do it.
Yeah.
So the way you do coverage is first a really detailed summary, and then the comment section beneath, which is what you thought of the movie, why it works, why it doesn't work, where you think its strengths and weaknesses lie, all that kind of shit. But yeah, so having been tasked to do that, that was the moment I realized, like, oh, it's in English, as an English major, you're reading novels and you're writing essays. In Hollywood development, you're reading scripts and you're writing coverage or notes.
Yeah.
And it's almost a direct like
Correlation. Yeah.
It really is. So that was the lucky eureka moment for me where I was like, oh, I actually do have some skills that apply, as it turns out. And that was what kind of pushed me towards realizing, okay, you're never going to be an actor or maybe even a writer or director or an agent, but being a producer or a studio executive, that is where script development is a really strong piece of the game.
And talent.
Well,
I know. No, that's my job to tell you that. No, you have talent.
well, I don't know
I've
about
seen.
that, but-
Look, there's some don't, some do. You do. You do. That's it. It's an artistic endeavor.
talking about story is, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of people don't understand story. Do you know what I mean? Like, if
Yes.
I say to you, a lot of times I'll do this with a student. I'll say, so what's the story of this script? And some people can do it really well. And other people are like, this is about a guy who doesn't know, and they can't really pin down what the story is.
Yeah.
And so it is a definite talent. And to be able to elucidate like what is great, what is not working is also an amazing skill.
It also is something you learn though too, right?
Yeah,
Like you do
of
learn,
course.
like you got to learn those lessons. So like there were like, you always look back and go, wow, I can't believe I didn't know that back then. What an idiot I used to be, right? Like, because
Life is a series of those moments.
yeah, because over time you start to recognize like story patterns and story necessities, and that's really amazing. Like what you're talking about, the point of a script or whatever, the ability to talk about the why of it.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that, and not everybody bothers to do that, and it's why sometimes movies feel directionless. Like the great movies usually have a statement.
Yeah.
That the movie exists to make a statement on greed or jealousy
Right.
or humanity or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, we
right?
just rewatched The Joker, and there's
Yep.
an amazing thing where she's looking at his jokes, and it says, "I hope my life makes more sense than my death," or "I hope my death makes more
Right.
sense than my life." And he spells sense CENTS.
Yep.
It's repeated again at the end of the movie. It's written in graffiti, and so this like kind of underlining of what.
That's what
Right,
what
that's
Todd
what the-
Phillips was trying to
Totally,
say in that
yes,
movie,
right.
right?
Hope my death makes-
So like, what's the premise statement of the movie, right? Is a
Right.
really important one.
Right.
Aliens, the Sigourney Weaver, James Cameron one. It's a statement on the power of motherhood.
Yes.
Right?
Totally.
It's like
Completely.
you can have all these badass space marines, but at the end of the day, the two people left standing are
Mama.
Sigourney Weaver protecting Newt
Yeah.
and this mother alien protecting her babies.
That's
and,
right.
and it's mama against mama at the end. And so the statement that
Yeah.
I take from that movie is like, nothing is stronger than a mother's love and protection.
Yes.
Get
Right?
away from
Yes.
her,
Even
you
Michael
bitch.
Biehn, who's a badass
the line.
space general,
Yes.
he's on the sidelines at the end,
That's
asking her for advice.
That's right.
As she's duct tapes flamethrowers to machine guns, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
So it's like, and she starts as the kind of civilian joke, and she
Yeah.
ends as the like hardcore leader.
Yes.
She is.
Right. So that movie had a really clear statement, wrapped up in fun and awesome action and great comedic relief and everything. But like, it knew what it wanted to say.
Yeah, and that's
So
why
it
it
ha-
works emotionally.
And why it endures.
Yes,
Right.
totally. Why we'll continue to watch it because we have a powerful emotional
Yeah.
experience when she saves the girl at the end. It's powerful.
We are emotionally invested. I mean, you talk
Yeah.
about like story structure, like that is one of the classics where, the setup is perfect, which the setup is you're with Sigourney Weaver. She wakes up from cryo sleep 50 years later, and you realize she has outslept the life of the daughter she had.
Yeah.
Right. So her daughter lived and died in the time that she's been asleep in cryo sleep.
Right.
So you have this civilian who has lost a child and then finds a child in Newt, right? So the character like needs are so clearly set up and so clearly paid off,
Yes.
right? At the end of the movie, she's not leaving the planet without Newt. No way in hell.
She's gonna die.
Right.
Or get new.
And we've earned that because we know where she came from.
Right.
Right. So like, that's just like, that's the kind of storytelling you aspire to find or to develop or, you know, to work with one of those greats who knows how to do it.
Yes. And it's still collaborative.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. You know, even if your filmmaker has like a darn perfect vision, there's going to be holes, and there hopefully someone along the line, a studio executive, an actor, a writer, a producer, might just raise their hand and have that one little revelation or idea that cracks it open or prevents it from falling apart. You know, and that doesn't diminish the filmmaker's vision at all if they took, you know, a good idea from someone. You know, and that's the, like, taking the ego out of filmmaking.
You must
right?
take a good idea from anyone.
Yes.
That's the collaboration. And that's in itself a gift.
It really is.
Will Smith talked about taking an idea from Pierce.
Yep.
That for his posture as King Richard, and he said
the shopping cart.
bending over, picking up the balls on the shopping cart.
Yep.
Made him bend over when he was walking. What an amazing.
Right, and Pierce is his hairstylist. I mean, he does his hair for every movie and has for 20 years or something like that. Everyone who is as a part of his trusted advisors is allowed on some level to contribute, which is that's brave.
Yeah, encouraged, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Will does it, and I think a lot of other smart filmmakers do it, where they pull people within different departments and also even people outside of the business in general. Right?
Artists in general do it.
Because we all think we know what we're doing, and we don't, but we try our best. But you're making content for the audience out there who isn't involved in the filmmaking process. They just care about the story you're providing them, right? So like at the end of the day, you're serving them.
Yeah.
So if a representative of they has an opinion on your work, it matters because that's who it's for.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and that's the whole preview process. You know, I've been in situations where we cut a movie together and we're sure it's perfect, and the audience just tells us we're wrong. You know? Like what you thought was working is not, what you didn't think was working is.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool wake up call when a bunch of really smart, experienced people are wrong and the audience is right, because the audience is kind of always right.
The end of the movie.
My Best Friend's Wedding. Is that what you're thinking?
No,
about?
the drama where he has an affair with, and then
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction.
Oh,
the ending was
changed.
They had to reshoot the entire.
Oh yeah, because it wasn't satifying. Did he shoot her?
It.
And they wanted his wife to shoot her, right? It was something like that.
He shot her and he goes to jail. That was their plan. He kills her.
Now he just murders the woman he had an affair with. Now I just hate everybody.
And he goes to jail. And now it's the most horrible ending in the world.
But the betrayed wife getting some kind of satisfaction of shutting it down.
Totally. Oh, then we'll cheer. Then we'll cheer.
We did cheer.
Because we're rooting for her.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Totally.
Not rooting for the other two.
Yeah, Michael Douglas.
Michael
Douglas is a little he messed up big time.
But if anybody deserves to win in that movie,
it's her.
It's her.
And when she gets it.
They didn't know until the audience said, this is horrible. I don't like this.
Yeah. It's so important to take that that kind of fresh advice from an audience, and the end of a movie is also so critical, right?
It's most important.
Like you can make an amazing first two acts of a movie, but if your third act is a letdown, that's all they remember. When the lights come up,
satisfying.
They remember the feeling that they walked out with, and so even if you had them on a total high for the first two acts, if you drop them on the third act, it's just done, right?
Yes.
And the opposite's kind of true too. Like, you can get away with a shaky first and second act. If your third act kills it,
that's right.
That's all they remember also. So it's amazing how important a third act is and how hard it is to get a third act right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard to get everything right. Editing right, lighting right. People, it's also seamless and invisible.
Yes.
That no one even knows a movie's being edited. They don't.
No.
I'm telling you, they don't understand that it's being cut and
yes, that there's choices.
Yes. Everything they see on there is a choice.
Yes. Designed to make you feel a certain way.
Right.
Right. To invest you in their goal and then to make you cheer when they achieve it or cry when they don't, or whatever, right? Like it's all big emotional manipulation.
So the reason I absolutely thought of bringing you on, and I want to make sure we hit this at some point, was I was talking to a brand new producer who was producing for his wife. She got to direct a movie, and he got, and he's experienced, but not as a producer. He writes, he did a. So he said, well, he called me, what exactly does a producer do? And the answer was so complicated and long. I said, I got to get Jon Mone on the podcast because you can give us a more. I know I have an idea and I know what producer does, but you are one, and you're not just one. You're great. Different things that producers do, because there's not one producer. There's many types of producers.
Yeah,
I feel it's honestly shrouded in mystery. If you're in the position of being an actor, you're like, what's that person do?
Yeah.
They're just like walking around and having conversations. Like, what's happening?
Yes.
What is happening?
We should definitely talk about the on-set thing, because that is a funny thing. And I'll give you the producer perspective of that, because yes, there is that attitude. But I mean, I guess, you're
Just
exactly
give
right
some different
in the
ones.
sense that there isn't just a quick answer, right?
Right.
Because there's so many kinds. I know the creative producer side of things, so that's what I can talk more about. But like, just to kind of level set on the other types, when you see those credits on the screen,
15 of
if
them.
you like Google all them, you can start to see who does what, and it becomes pretty clear, which is you'll see some producers who were just the money. Right. So someone who has a huge film fund and they provide, $50 million to make the movie, they're going to take a producer credit on the movie.
Right.
And they deserve it because they provided the financial resources to make the damn thing. So that's their credit, but they're not in the weeds in the creative, right? They're just
stars manager.
A stars manager, absolutely. Sometimes capital P, sometimes EP, right? So they'll be on there. Maybe a rights holder. Maybe
A rights holder means the audience would know what that. A rights holder, someone owns the rights to the movie, to the script, or to the story.
Yeah. So maybe it's a rights holder who owns IP. Maybe it's a rights holder.
What's IP?
Intellectual property.
Intellectual.
So maybe it's someone who owns the rights to Transformers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Or Barbie.
or whatever, right? So that's a way to become a producer, because basically your attitude is, this is my property. If you guys want to make a movie about it, that's cool, but I deserve to be one of the producers who's part of that.
And
story.
they get paid.
They do, yeah. They'll get a credit and they'll get a fee.
Sometimes money afterwards, percentage.
Oh yeah.
Back end.
Participation, yeah. So
Sometimes.
it depends on your leverage and your track record, right? So like Jerry Bruckheimer and Will Smith, like they really participate in the success of their movies.
Jerry Bruckheimer is one of the most legendary.
The best.
He's been 40 years, going back to Tom Cruise and even before that,
and is essentially kind of created his own almost genre in the sense of these big, fun blockbuster action movies that he's known for.
Yeah.
Both
his
Top
track
Guns?
record is ridiculous.
Right.
Like just in terms of the amount of franchises he has launched, and it's so hard to make a good movie, and he's made so many. So at some point, it's not luck anymore. It's
not luck.
He's got a vision, and he there's
And
a
he knows
reason
how to execute.
that he's the way he is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is
And I've got to see it recently on Bad Boys 4, and it's real.
No, it's magical.
Yeah.
I had dinner with him and a couple of other people. He listened. He's probably spoke the least at the dinner.
Oh yeah.
Everyone was. There was
That's
a lot.
so
It was 10 people. He spoke the least, but he
But
just,
when he spoke, it had impact. Is that what you're saying?
It was so smart, and it was very positive. He was always positive.
Oh yeah. No, and he just doesn't waste his words.
Yeah.
So like there were plenty of times where we're all yapping away, and he would just kind of kick back and listen and let us kind of spin around, and then eventually he'd kind of stop us politely in a fun way and say, "Okay, that's enough of that. Here's what we're doing."
Yeah, and he's still
and he was dead right.
Yes.
And what we said with thousands of words, he said with 6.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's amazing.
And you listen and you do it.
and he gets it made. He gets it done.
again and again.
You know.
Well, I guess that's why I wanted to bring that up, which is like there's the different kinds of producers. There's the financiers, there's the rights holders, there's all these other categories where you can get a producer credit because of something you brought to the table.
Right.
Good.
That it couldn't be made without you on some level.
You had some critical piece of the property. Then there's the Jerry Bruckheimers and the creative producers of the world, and which is what I do as well.
Those are the real producers.
Well, they're
meaning the day-to-day, from the beginning to the end.
Right.
Yeah, maybe you don't want to call them the real
real's not fair
producers. That's
because,
not right.
because like
Yeah.
a line
You're
producer is a producer,
Of course,
and
I'm
they're
sorry.
not in the creative realm, but holy shit, they move mountains, right?
Yeah.
And their job is so complicated and so critical, and they own every minute of responsibility and the financial repercussions.
I do
that come
not
with it.
envy the line producer's job. That
So like
is
a line producer
job.
I sometimes feel like a moron when I'm near a line producer because like I'm talking about story stuff, but they're talking about like permits and logistics and
parking.
like real stuff.
Like on Emancipation.
Oh, Chris Brigham was our line producer on that
Brigham
one.
was
He's a
amazing.
legend. He did the Bond movie just before that and Scorsese movies, and he just is this unflappable.
So unflappable.
Right.
Like crazy things would be happening, and I don't even mean in a bad way, just like bombs in this thing. And he's like, how are you today?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm great. He's so relaxed. He just nothing bothers him.
He's
It's
seen
amazing.
it all, and he just knows there's always a way to solve it.
Yeah.
The thousands of sheets of steel so that the trucks could go on top of
the
the
logistics.
mud.
Yeah. It's almost like running a military operation.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Where you have a base that services the next base that services the next base. You need medical safety and food and all this. And so he's creating this
Fresh water.
like a military operation.
It
is,
was.
Right. And you need to be efficient. You need to be safe. And you also need to provide the filmmaking team with the environment that they need to make their work, right?
And that's called the line producer.
The line producer, right?
Right.
So there's rights holders, there's talent reps who sometimes get in there. There's the line producers who really physically make the movie. Their counterpart at studios is physical production. So there's physical production heads at studios and there's line producers on movies, and they live in that same world of hiring crew and creating budgets and schedules and permits and
So now let's get into your thing, which is the creative producer.
Yes, so the creative producer is, I guess, what a lot of people probably imagine when they think of a producer, right? So it's good to like address the other categories, but the classic kind of Hollywood idea of what a producer is usually the creative one, right? And so that means that as the creative producer, you're out there trying to identify a movie, put it together, make it, and get it out to the world,
So you're starting at the very beginning, finding the project.
Like literally the beginning, in the sense of sometimes it's just hey, what if we did this one day, and that begins the ball rolling, or it's a script that lands in your lap that's really good, and you say, hey, we could do something with this if we put the right talent together, or it's an idea that you've always wanted to work on, and you just go find a writer and you shape it up.
Around how many projects are you working on at one time?
Yeah. Right. Currently, I have 45 projects in development. Yeah.
Is that average? Or
I would say it's average for a big production company. Right. I guarantee you Imagine or Chernin or Jerry Bruckheimer have more.
Right.
Yeah.
My daughter, my daughter's a creative executive, and she says she's at this moment working on 10 projects, but it's a small company.
Yeah, exactly. She's
a
at the
small
Filmation
division.
genre division.
Yes,
Which is awesome. I really want to work with them.
Yeah.
So 45. The reason we have 45 projects is because we at Westbrook, Will and Jada's company, set out to do something where we would make the classic Will Smith movies, whether they're new originals like King Richard or Emancipation, or classic franchises like Bad Boys or I Am Legend or Men in Black. Right. Also, movies for for Jada, also movies for Willow and Jaden, who aren't technically, I think, in the company in the way that Will and Jada are, but like we're always looking for content for them. And then also looking for new movies to make that don't rely on the Smith family talent. We get a lot of incoming for the family that maybe isn't right for them, but could be right for somebody else. Right. And so we kind of set out to say, hey, just because Will passes on it doesn't mean that Keanu Reeves shouldn't do it. Right. So instead of just yes or no for Will, there should be a third category, which is no for Will, yes for someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that
Let's
you'll
make more
produce
movies.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we also are doing animation now and documentaries. And so the goal is eventually to have a year in the next few years where we do a Will movie, a Jada movie, a movie with outside talent,
Yeah.
a documentary, and an animated movie.
And
Yeah.
some
Right.
of them you can finance yourself.
Yes, we could. We definitely finance development ourselves, and we want to
So
raise
you're
money to
becoming
finance
this, you're transitioning into a small studio.
a mini studio. Yep, exactly.
Right.
And if you have enough, leverage in the deal making, if you have like, let's say, a great Will Smith script, you can hopefully negotiate that. You can say, hey, we want to make this with you, but let us co-finance it with you, Paramount.
Right.
Or let us fully finance it and just you guys distribute it.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't just do that anytime, but you can do it when you basically have something that is so wanted that you can try to negotiate those terms. So that's
Right.
always a goal because, who wouldn't want to participate in the success of a movie that you helped launch,
Yeah.
right?
Most people don't realize how long some of these things take. They think, oh, let's just make a movie and you put it up and in 6 months it's done.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. So each movie, takes like 3 to 5 years at best. Some take 10 or 20. Like you said, Bad Boys 3 was 17 years. Yeah. A lot of times there will be a great movie and the interview will come out and the director will reveal they've been working on it for 10 or 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a passion project. It never got over the top. They always loved it. They never gave up on it. And then finally the pieces fell into place and they got it done, right? So that's why you need 45 projects in development.
Yeah. Right.
Because even if you do your job right, and even if somehow magically you had 45 great scripts, which will never happen, but pretend you did, it's the odds of those movies still getting made, greenlit and shot and released are still super slim. So like of those 45 projects in development, if 5 of them become movies, then we've done a fantastic job. Right. So you need to incubate tons of projects because if you just thought, okay, I know which 5 we're going to make, and you just worked on those 5, then you might make somewhere between 0 and 1 movie.
Yeah.
Right? But if you have 45 running simultaneously, just inevitably some are going to die in the vine, but maybe the one that you never thought is going to rise to the top and happen, right? So like it's a numbers game a little bit when it comes to development because development is so unpredictable because it's art. And so maybe a writer shows up and just crushes it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they show up and just completely miss it. And that doesn't mean that they're good or bad writers. It's just part of the nature.
Yeah.
American Beauty, Ball, I think was the writer's name.
Yeah.
Ball.
Alan Ball.
Yeah, Alan Ball.
Alan Ball. So Spielberg said the script was perfect. This is the story, and they didn't change it. And they just when they got it, and they just shot that script. They hired
Sam Mendes.
first time director
Yep.
Sam Mendes, who was a theater
Big theater guy in England,
and turned into this classic film. And
Yep.
sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah, and sometimes you do shoot the script. I've been around a couple of those. And then other times it's the opposite, where the script is kind of a rough sketch and you're making changes on the fly.
Yeah.
And I've seen that end up good or bad also. So there really isn't any like certainty you can latch onto.
William Goldman, I always tell everyone to read that book.
Which line did I tell?
Adventures in the Screen
Adventures
Tray.
in the Screen Tray.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the first one. Which line tells is great. But
That one's also
he
great.
lays it out perfectly. Nothing has changed in terms, even though technology has changed. The book is a must-read if you want to know how the screen industry works, how the film industry works.
Yep.
He brings particularly 2 gigantic blockbusters, supposedly blockbusters. One was Independence Day, and the other one was Mars Attacks, coming out simultaneously about Martians.
Yep. Yeah.
With over 100 million, 150 million each on the budget.
Yep.
One has 10 Academy Award winners. The other one has just top-notch actors.
Yep.
And the one that they thought was going to be a smash guaranteed, Mars Attacks, bombs.
Yeah. And Independence Day goes crazy.
Day goes biggest movie ever.
I've been there. When I was working for Scott Stuber, who now runs Netflix, we had a deal at Universal. He and Mary Parent had been co-chairman at Universal and started a production company, and I joined them over there, and made a bunch of fun movies with them. They're incredible producers and now studio heads, both of them.
Yeah.
Mary runs Legendary, Stuber runs Netflix.
Oh,
wow. So I got to like work under them, see what they do, and I ended up on 2 projects simultaneously, Battleship and Ted.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the second one?
Ted.
Oh,
Ted.
So
Ted.
Mark
Battleship
Wahlberg.
and Ted. So we're making both at the same time, right?
Oh my God, Battleship is
And so-
hilarious.
Battleship is a $200 million movie,
Right.
but it's based on this huge IP.
Of course.
And the kind of studio thinking at the time was, well, Transformers worked for Paramount,
Right.
So I guess Battleship
will
is
work.
going to work for Universal,
Yeah.
right? And so let's just make a Battleship movie,
Yeah.
Kind of this like false positive,
Yeah.
right? Of like, and and not appreciating when you look a little deeper. It's like, well, Transformers had characters, and Battleship has
Battleship
like
is just the ship.
plastic pegs, and you're just kind of
Right.
blind targeting plastic
right,
pegs.
yeah.
But whatever the case, I remember when we were making that movie, it was like, okay, Battleship's going to be a hit. It's going to be a franchise. It's like a guaranteed like winner.
Right.
Sure. It had a lot of big stars.
And then, yeah, exactly. I mean, stars like Liam Neeson, Alexander Skarsgård, Taylor Kitsch,
Rihanna.
Jesse Plemons, Rihanna, Pete Berg, who's an amazing director who
Yes.
did the best possible job you
I
could
know.
ever
Aaron
do.
worked with Pete Berg
that
on
assignment.
multiple projects.
Yeah, I worked
Yeah.
with Pete on,
course. Right.
Hancock.
Hancock.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
he's
right.
the best.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, he's
Yes.
spectacular.
So, super to your point, super smart people,
Mm-hmm.
tons of resources, huge IP. This thing's got to work. And then Ted is this $50 million R-rated stoner teddy bear movie, and people are like, "That's gonna get you fired. Like that's guaranteed to fail."
A vulgar teddy bear.
and not just fail, but be embarrassing.
Be embarrassed.
And
Yeah.
so basically, like,
Seth MacFarlane, right?
Yeah.
He's
Right.
right.
But they didn't know at
No,
that point.
I know.
well, and he was a huge, success in television, and he's a visionary, but he hadn't done a film yet.
No,
Right.
that was his
But-
first. Yeah.
So it's like, I remember people telling me like, Battleship's gonna work, Ted's gonna fail, and like, congrats and sorry, basically, right? And then sure enough, the opposite happens,
Yeah.
right? All of a sudden, Battleship comes out and kind of struggles, despite surrounding it with the best possible people, doing their best work, and then Ted creeps up on everybody and just opens huge. And at the end of the day, Battleship cost 200 and made 400, and Ted cost 50 and made 500.
Yeah.
And there was no Battleship sequel, but there was a Ted 2, and now there's a Ted TV series on Peacock,
Yeah,
right? So
right,
like,
yeah.
it just goes to show, like, no one knows.
Right.
And you could slap as many Academy Award winners as you want onto a project. It doesn't mean it's going to work.
Nope.
But Seth MacFarlane had a really clear vision. He knew exactly the movie he wanted to make, And even if it sounded crazy, it was like he was certain, and it had a statement. It was a movie about maturity. It's
Right.
It's a fun comedy about a stoner teddy bear that is crude.
Yes.
But when you think about the metaphor, it's pretty obvious, right? It's like a man-child with his teddy bear who is in a relationship and is struggling to grow up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. The clarity of the vision, so important.
Yeah.
They still needed a brilliant script,
Yes.
Yes.
brilliant director,
Yes.
brilliant actors, brilliant cinematographer, perfect sound. I mean,
Yes.
the
And by the way, Seth
special
MacFarlane
effects.
was like the 3 of the first 5 you just listed there.
Right,
So,
right,
yes,
right,
because he wrote the script with
Yeah.
his collaborators Sulkin and Wilder, amazing, from Family Guy.
but still collaborators.
Yes, but that script was the script itself was hilarious. and incredible.
I know. It's,
He directed it. He performed
Right.
the bear. He also wrote a bunch of other things on it, music and everything else. So like the singular vision of that movie is probably what let it succeed, despite it being the craziest idea of all time.
yes. And he can repeat it. That's why we know he's brilliant. But he's going to fail too.
He
I
will.
don't
He'll
know
make
any-
mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who
yeah.
does one hit. They all have that.
Yes.
I don't care who
No
they
one's
are.
immune. It's impossible.
Yes.
Stanley Kubrick. Oh, he made some bad movies.
You name your favorite director or
Right.
actor, and we can bring
They
up
had
a
a
stinker.
stinker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's important for everyone to know that you're not gonna hit a home run.
And nobody has all the answers.
Right. And I like baseball because in baseball, to the metaphor, because in baseball, to be a Hall of Fame baseball player, you lose 2 out of 3 times.
Yes. Yes.
2 out of 3 times you fail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Strike out.
2 out of 3 you fail.
Yeah.
That means that's terrible.
Yes. Yeah. That's
And now you're in the
slightly
Hall
better
of
than a
Fame.
coin flip. Yeah.
And you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, John. What was the first movie that you saw from beginning to end? Because I feel like that's a big marker in most producers' creative life of like the thing where you're like, I saw it, I started it, I worked on it, we got it into production, and we distributed it.
Yeah. It's a really cool one for me. It was like a rosy picture of how the film industry works, which maybe is what like encouraged me to keep going.
Yeah.
Until I realized
So
like,
that you were like, I'm going back to law school.
Yeah. No,
I quit.
if it had been a real shitty one, maybe I would have. No, it was crazy. It was I was working for Brian Lord, the big agent at CA. I was his assistant in the mailroom, in the training program. After the mailroom, I joined Brian Lord's desk, and he would get tons of great material because he represented Robert De Niro and Brad Pitt and Uma Thurman and all kinds of crazy talent. And the script for The Rookie came in, the Dennis Quaid baseball movie.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Okay.
script.
And it was going to be George Clooney and some other big director for a minute. And then that package fell apart. But I remember that script being, I was just like, this script's awesome. And I'm like a sports nut. So I was like already loving it.
Yeah.
But it was just a really special script by this amazing writer, Mike Rich. And I remember that it landed with these new producers, and I was ready to kind of make my move out of the agency. And through some various connections, I basically was like, I went to the CAA guys and said, I want to go join this new production company. And one of their scripts was The Rookie. So got the blessing, made the move, and started as like basically the it was two producers. I was their assistant and their head of development. Okay,
wow.
Because that's how small the company was.
Yeah.
So I'm answering phones, but also reading scripts.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yes. Yeah.
And but so we're making this movie, The Rookie.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be at Disney, and it's gonna be with Dennis Quaid. And we did the first draft was amazing, like I talked about. We did a rewrite, and the studio literally said, sorry, the first draft was perfect. Let's just go back and shoot the first draft. Never seen that happen, and I don't think we'll ever see that again.
Yeah.
But the studio admitted that they didn't even
wrong.
need to fix the script.
Right.
Because that's how good the script was.
Yeah. Right.
So already that's too good to be true. So that was nice. Like where the development process is like success before you've begun.
Yeah.
Nina Jacobson was the head of the studio. She was incredible. She became a huge producer, but she was such a good studio executive because she was super creative and smart. So we go to make that movie, and I think it was Nina had the vision of like Disney movies, sports movies can be soft.
Yeah.
So she hired this director, Gavin O'Connor, who had done an indie movie that was a little rougher around the edges. And basically her attitude was like, I'm going to counteract the sweet, soft, saccharine thing with the director who's got a little bit of edge. Yeah. Right? The combination of those two things made Rookie a really good movie.
Yeah.
And anyway, we went down to Austin, Texas. We had John Schwartzman, the legendary cinematographer. And we shot the movie, and it was a breeze. And we tested it, and it scored like a 99.
Oh, wow.
And we locked it, and we put it out, and it made a bunch of money. And it was like,
And you thought,
Oh my God, it's always going to be this way.
It cost us $20 million. It made 80. Everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Reviews are great.
Yeah.
It was pre-Rotten Tomatoes, but it would have had a crazy, awesome Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, totally.
And so I was like, oh, this is great. This is easy.
Oh. It's just going to be like this from here on out.
Easy peasy, Yeah. Easy. Never happened again, but it was really cool.
What do we call it? That's the thing in The Alchemist is like beginner's luck. Like it's like a thing of like that you get this little taste of success right at the beginning. And not that you were at the beginning, but at that point in your life to get that big win maybe sets you up for the problems that will undoubtedly arise and the conflict and the bad things, because there's always going to be conflict and difficulties.
Yeah.
It's cool, though,
well,
to have that.
John, you said never happen again. It did. King Richard, which you were so instrumental on. I'm not saying there weren't problems, but that was a great shoot.
It was pretty magical.
Oh, no, it was. The shoot, the creative, there was no creative bumps.
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
Like we knew what we were trying to do in that movie because we had the perfect set of elements. We had a great script, a great director, great actors. We had all the tools. The only nightmare we dealt with in that movie was COVID.
I know.
It was a 9-week shoot.
We
shot 3 weeks.
Turned positive.
Shut down for 6 months.
Yes.
And then had to go pick up the last 6 weeks.
Right.
That was intense.
That was.
Yeah.
Producers turned it positive because the girls
looked older.
And
they were supposed to look older. I know.
And they were supposed to be 4 years later, and it looked like they grew up.
That kind of was magical.
Who would know that?
That's Kind of like we talked about earlier with the kitchen scene, where sometimes what seems like the disaster sets you into a better place.
Yes, because they really did grow. What, 2 inches, something? You know.
They look substantially more mature,
Yes.
and it actually helped sell it in a way that we couldn't have done if we had shot it consecutively, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, it's crazy how that worked. And Emancipation was similar. You know, we didn't really have any creative bumps. We had weather bumps, right?
We had a tornado, not a tornado,
A hurricane. We had tornadoes also, but we did get a major hurricane.
5 weeks, 6 weeks,
6 weeks down, hurricane.
You know, I have to say, everybody just kept such a positive attitude in such difficult physical conditions. And that was like everybody just banded together. It just felt like every day everybody was like, yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Like,
Snakes.
Yeah, it was,
Snakes, hurricanes,
physically
tornadoes.
It was uncomfortable.
You know,
yeah.
105-degree temperature where everyone was fainting.
And Will was such a leader on that too, to just be like plunging into swamp water when I was like, I wouldn't go near that swamp water.
No, it's still insane that happened.
I know.
Yeah. But, you know, you'd asked about, the first movie. So the first movie was The Rookie, and it was a smooth, awesome ride.
Yeah.
And I had a couple more to follow that were also really good experiences too. The next one was Miracle, the hockey movie.
Yeah,
and that was super
such a
personal to me because I
beautiful
played
movie.
hockey my whole life and played hockey in Massachusetts where a lot of the story was based. So
That was a great
that was a
movie.
special one. And then Invincible with Mark Wahlberg was the next one.
Oh, yeah.
So got to do like 3 in a row of these inspirational true stories. All 3 were written by Mike Rich, produced by these guys I was working for, Mark Chardy and Gordon Gray, who were really good at what they do. So these were like these. I was starting to get into this like underdog true story sports niche movie, right?
Yeah.
And then took the leap to go work with Scott and Mary and started doing kind of movies of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah. To a larger
Yeah.
corporation.
But I do love those 3 movies were so fun to make. They're so fun to watch. Audiences love these feel good, true, inspirational stories. So still have that and still want to do that. King Richard is that.
I know.
Yeah.
Pursuit of Happiness is that.
Yeah.
Straight Outta Compton I got to work with at Universal was that. You know, so I'll always have a soft spot for like the inspirational
The
biopic.
underdog. It's so...
Yeah. There was a moment, I don't know if it was Nina, but someone at Disney at one point labeled them chick flicks for guys. Which is pretty cool and pretty right on.
Oh my God, I
Right?
love that so much.
Yeah.
See, it's so funny because, you know, Aaron will sometimes, you know, or various people will say like, oh, that's a chick flick. And I'm like,
always say it.
I really just, I keep saying, you know, okay, if you label that a chick flick, then I'm calling this movie a dick flick.
Yes,
She does. She
it
calls
was
them-
Disney, so they couldn't say it that way, but they would
Yes,
like to.
yes.
No, but and I think the reason that they said it, and to that point, is like about wish fulfillment, right? Like sometimes you create movies that draw an audience in because of wish fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
In a romantic comedy, it's what if I found, you know, the love of my life,
Yes.
right? In sports movies, for guys, especially like washed up losers like myself, it's like both The Rookie and Invincible are stories of like washed up old dudes who get another shot at going pro.
Yes.
Right. So we all secretly are sitting in the audience going like, what if I could do that?
Yep. Like the
Maybe
natural.
my arm's still got some juice left in it, you know? Right? So we're never going to make it to play on the Eagles or
you
for
get that
Major League
little
Baseball.
taste of it.
But we can, the movie allows us to imagine maybe we could.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so true.
That's why we love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
In the same way that like 16 Candles makes you think that maybe the hot guy in the school is going to choose you.
Yes.
Right?
Oh God,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
You know, About a Boy is actually one of my favorite movies. You ever seen that with Hugh
course,
Grant?
yeah.
And it's like that movie is actually his story.
Yeah.
It's his story of growth and development.
Yeah.
And yet we think of it as like a romance or a romantic comedy. It's very funny.
Yeah.
But it's like this movie is actually about a man's development.
Yeah.
It's all of them get that, but
Well, About a Boy, he's a boy.
I know.
That's
yeah.
the
But it's
he's
a
the
romantic
boy,
comedy.
not that's
I
the
know.
boy.
And it's
Yes.
a chick flick, but I think it's very satisfying on all levels.
Yep.
Did you
For
say
men
it's a
and
chick
women.
flick?
Well, that's what people would say. It's a
wouldn't-
chick flick.
I don't know. I wouldn't call it a chick flick.
Oh, so he's the arbiter of what the chick
Yeah,
flicks
yeah,
are.
yeah.
I see.
Subjective. You know?
But yeah, and I would say like generally speaking, the genre of movie dictates what type of emotion you're going for, right? So like, yeah, rom-com is about love and you know, finding love and navigating that. And
Right, and
sports
the end-
movies are about like, what if I still got it kind of thing.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
But like John Wick is, what if I was so strong that if somebody fucked with me and my puppy, I could put them all down.
Right.
Right. So there's an empowerment wish fulfillment there.
Yeah,
right?
revenge, total. Yes.
Yeah. Or a horror movie, the point is to make you feel scared, right?
Yeah.
Or a comedy to make you laugh. So like it's one of the important litmus tests we do in development is taking a step back from your project and saying, what's this movie trying to deliver to the audience? What you know, movies should make people feel a certain way. How are we trying to make them feel in this movie?
Yeah.
Right? And once you identify that, then you have like a North Star, and then you build around that.
Yeah.
And then you try not to forget that.
Yeah.
Right? So like each genre has its own kind of emotional want.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, so I love that. That's really interesting. So, you know, so often I'm reading friend scripts or things like that, and it's sometimes very difficult, especially if somebody's writing something that's very personal to them, to communicate. Like it's not that the subject isn't interesting; it's what do you want the audience to feel.
Yes,
that's a great way to reframe it.
It is. Well, and also, there's nothing. I shouldn't say worse, but when people try to write personal stories. Sometimes they don't realize that the story is meaningful to them because it's full of context that they haven't shared with the audience.
Right. Totally.
Because so it's kind of like, I guess you have to be there. Right?
Yes.
Right? In the sense
what's
of like,
significant about
this moment was so significant. It meant so much to me, and it made me feel so certain way.
Right. How do you translate?
But I don't know
how do you
how
translate
you grew up
to the
and
audience?
what your parents said to
Make us
you.
feel it.
Right. So like sometimes these really personal stories can just go right over your head.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the movie Minari, right? That movie is like such an incredible, but what works about it is that it fills in so much of the world that we can actually appreciate all of these things about the chickens, you know?
Yes.
And like, what do the little baby chickens mean? And the squashes and the,
and
he
what
did
if,
a great
what
job.
if me and my family ended up in a similar situation, and would we be able to persevere? Or we able to get through it, even if we weren't from that culture or that place?
And don't speak English?
Right.
Oh, man.
So it like that movie, even if you totally can't relate to it personally, you can imagine because they provide you with the context.
They do.
Right?
They provide
that was my family.
What do you mean?
My family wasn't Korean, but they were Polish.
Yep.
And they had no money.
And didn't speak English.
They were in the camps, in the repatriation camps. What were they called? Refugee camps.
Yep.
Came over to the United States because of a relative.
Yep.
Not a word of English.
Yep.
And had to make it. And it was really hard.
And that like the cultural specificity of that, or Minari is really unique. But there's a universality to those tales.
Yeah.
Because not just even American, like across the globe, everybody understands being
a refugee,
being sent to a new place where
Outsider.
you're not familiar and you're not really welcomed. And how do you figure it out? Right. Yes. And so, you don't need to actually be part of the specific focus to appreciate the feeling of it. Yeah. Right.
But when translated well, we'll all understand.
Yeah. Straight Outta Compton was a really cool one for that because like the bad version of that movie, the challenge of that movie would be, well, who wants to see a period 80s movie about gangster rap?
Oh, yeah.
Like, and that was a challenge that like the studio faced, and Donna Langley, the head of Universal, was basically just like, sorry, we're making this movie, period. I don't care what you say. Right. So she just kind of decided, I'm going to make, there's someone special.
Whether you get it or not, it's happening.
Yes. Because she had a vision for why it would work. And the vision, and the marketing department, Josh Goldstein, who you guys know, who runs Warner's marketing, but used to run Universal and Sony and was involved in a lot of Will's big hits. They all closed in on kind of the universality of that movie. And the opening of the trailer, if you guys remember, just put that stake in the ground. The opening of the trailer is Dr. Dre walks into the kitchen of his house, and his mom is like, why aren't you going to school? Why aren't you working? You're pursuing this bullshit DJ stuff. And he's like, I got paid last night. And she's like, $50, that's it? And he goes, it's a start. But everybody knew that Dre had just become rap's first billionaire.
Yes.
Yeah, right,
So the gag was a kid with a dream in a kitchen with $50 in his pocket could become a legend billionaire.
Yeah, right.
Which meant anybody watching that movie could say, well, I got a dream and I got $50 in my pocket. Maybe I can become a legend.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not rap. Maybe it's whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. So you could like go on this very specific journey of gangster rap, but apply it to whatever the hell you're into, you know? And that's what lets it go beyond just NWA fans. It became just a movie about people aspiring to create, their dreams, right? And that's why it opened to $60 million instead of $6 million.
Yes.
Right.
Because Donna and Josh and team found the universal perspective in the very small, unique story that it was.
Yeah. Aaron worked on the beginning of that in the pre-production. He was working with the actors because he works with F. Gary Gray and has worked with him in the past. And so I remember reading the script and being like, this is totally different. Like, we've not seen this movie.
Yes.
And it was exciting to see them putting out this kind of a film that nobody was making at that point in time.
Yeah.
It was great.
It's a weird combo because you'd think gangster rap would live in a different emotion than friendship and sadness and hopes and dreams.
Yes,
and,
family.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, they weren't gangsters. That's the other thing. That's a misnomer. They were not gangsters.
No, they did gangster rap.
Right.
But they were artists.
No, they were artists.
Yes.
They really were artists. Dr. Dre was not a gangster.
And they partied. They
They
were
partied.
edgy.
They partied.
But they were artists first.
Any more different than rock and rollers party?
Not even close, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a label that we place to like culturally pinpoint the world that it came from.
Yes.
But to say, were they personally gangsters? I don't know. Does it matter?
Well, to me, it matters because it moves into racism.
Oh,
because they were not. What's his name? There was Dr. Dre was not. He was from a middle class family.
Ice Cube.
Ice Cube had a wonderful family that he came from, and Eazy was a drug dealer, but he wasn't a. Poor people make money sometimes by dealing drugs, not the big drug dealers. They deal it to friends.
Yep.
It's an issue of poverty.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the fourth one was
MC Ren.
MC Ren.
Yep.
And he was again none of these people were gangsters.
No, I mean, again, I can't presume to totally know their stories, but we got to learn it pretty well. Working, and Cube and Dre were hands-on producers in that movie.
Absolutely.
Too. So they really oversaw and made sure it was authentic. But my takeaway was they were artists who came from an environment that had informed their kind of perspective on gangster culture, which they spoke to through their music.
Yeah.
And they probably lived it whether they wanted to or not because of their proximity to it.
Yeah, you can't avoid it.
Is perfect.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
But it starts with their artists. They, and
they still are today. And they
Yes. And they do. The environment they came from was terrible. It was.
But they took their environment and turned it into art.
Turned it into art, capitalism.
Yeah.
Becoming the richest men in the world.
By the way, you're right. Capitalism. I mean, they were great businessmen too. They understood leaning into the stereotype of being a gangster rapper.
Yes.
They embraced that as characters, right? I mean, they and you hear that more today. But like some artists acknowledge, like there's my outer me and there's my real me, right? And I think back then maybe you didn't even appreciate that, and you actually thought like they were doing the shit they were saying in their lyrics, right? And they weren't. They were talking about people they knew and things they had seen, and maybe they fucked around with some stuff. But
if you're a writer and you write novels about spies, James Bond, right? Does that mean that's what you do? No, I mean it's ridiculous.
You're creating art.
Yes. He didn't do. Ian Fleming didn't do that.
Well, I think we're about coming to the end. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
Well, let's ask John. It's such. I can't tell you how much fun it is talking with you, John.
No, it's awesome talking to you guys. I mean, look, I'm lucky to have gotten to work with you guys and with Will and with all the people I've gotten to work with over the years.
We're gonna do more.
Just trying to stack things you learn from everybody you get to come across. But the question about what producers do, like just to wrap that up at the end of the day, the creative producer, like you talked about sitting on set. That's a really good point because we got to find a bunch of these stories and they come from all different sides. Maybe we generate them, maybe somebody else generates it and brings it to us. We got to try to kind of push it through the system and, get the talent involved, get an actor, get a director, get it set up at a studio. Then you got to prep it. Then you got to shoot it.
Yeah.
And then you got to edit and market it. But the shooting part is interesting because if you've done your job right as a producer in all that lead up, in the development and the prep, there should be lots of stretches of time where you don't need to intervene.
Right.
where no one needs to hear your friggin' opinion.
But you're there.
Right?
But you're
Right.
there.
They're watching. But like a good day is when you're at the monitors,
Yeah.
eating craft service,
Hanging out.
talking about whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Because what that means is the artist that you've collaborated with got it.
And the
Right.
whole
And they don't-
machine's working.
And
it's
they got it in the sense of
working.
like, I got this,
Yeah.
play Scrabble on your phone.
Yeah.
Right? Because the script is good and the actors know what they're doing and the director's got their vision and like God forbid you intervene. Like
Yeah.
right? So like if you've done your job as a producer well in the early setup, not doing anything on set is a testament to how good of a job you did.
Yeah. The
right? Like,
creative machine is humming, and you don't
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
intervene.
and there's never gonna be a movie where there's no reason to intervene. But like the best case scenario is that you can sit back and watch the magic happen, and you were a part of putting the team together to make the magic happen. But like, don't get in their way. Like if the director, actor, and writer are like in sync, like the worst thing you can do is like put yourself in the middle of that unnecessarily. So anyway, a producer who's doesn't seem to be doing much on set either did a great job setting it up, or they're out to lunch. They don't look good. But I guess what I'm saying is
They're either brilliant,
Yeah.
or they did a great job, or watch out.
or someone else is doing their job for
Right,
them.
yeah,
But yeah. So like, I guess, and it's funny because there's this microcosm of just production, right? So 3 to 5 years to make a movie. The production phase is maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people only see that phase.
Oh, I know. It's the tip of the iceberg.
The line producer,
Yeah.
the costume designer, the actors. They only see that 3-month little window.
Totally.
They didn't see the year or two it took to get it going, and they won't see the year or two it'll take to finish it and put it out. So sometimes producers can get a little bit miffed when it's suggested that they're not doing much on set, because it's like, you don't even know what we're doing.
You have
Right?
no idea.
Well, that's why
You don't know
wanted
what
you
it took
here.
to get here, and you don't know what it's going to take to
Right.
get to the end,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, I guess if someone sees a producer on set milling about, looking lost, like it doesn't
Assume
necessarily
that they're doing things.
mean
yes.
that they're not doing their
Yeah,
job.
I know.
Yeah, to me, the dream version would be you work real hard through prep and development.
Yeah.
Development and prep. You have such a crack team and such a crack plan that you barely have to lift a finger through that phase.
Yeah.
Other than maybe just logistical stuff.
Yeah. I
But
know.
like if the creative is great,
Yeah.
it's almost like don't
Step
mess
back.
it up.
Yeah.
And then get in the other room and work.
And
see
if
what
there are
happens.
no fires, there's nothing to put out.
Right. And so you don't want to be, the worst case is the arsonist and the fireman, where you create fake problems
Light
to
the
fix
fire.
to give yourself a purpose, right?
Oh, that's
And that's true
terrible.
in every
Do people
industry.
do that?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, that's so
God, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody trying to...
Producers.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying is like, I get it. I get it. To be the person who's like, oh no, there's a problem. I fixed it.
Versus
Da-da.
versus you just sat around and watched magic happen, right?
Yeah.
So like that urge to like prove your worth. I don't know. You gotta that could be a pitfall sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ego that needs people
Yeah.
to congratulate
Look
you.
at what I did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess the point is sometimes a good producer can be outside of the action occasionally, and it still means they're doing their job well.
I know.
And that's what's
Yeah.
weird when people are like, "What's this guy doing? Why are they here?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
they do for a living?"
But having your face here, that's why I wanted you here. People could see a producer. You could tell us what you do, because then we're going to get editors. Who knows what an editor?
I know. I love
What's
that.
that?
Yeah.
Yes,
They-
totally.
We're gonna get we want to get all these people. There is many ways, many paths to be in the film industry.
Yes.
And you start
And
out
acting is just the most visible one. And I
Right.
think sometimes people default to that because they don't understand the possibilities of where their skill sets could actually be better employed.
Yeah.
and it's all artistic. It's all creative.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really is. And the editor is a whole magical
Yes.
phase. We often talk about it as like it's a rewrite almost.
That's right.
Right? So like you did all your script work through the prep and development phase, but when you're in post, that's a different type of rewriting.
Yeah.
Now you're rewriting visual images.
Yes.
But you're still doing rewriting. You're still saying,
And
well, what if we
sound.
said here this, and what if we put emphasis on
Yeah.
that, and what if we, that, all the fixing. So
Yeah.
editors are like a whole other magical realm that are just take you to the next
So
level.
we want to bring all these artists in. That's what's the
It's
goal.
so cool. It's so
that
smart.
Everyone then starts to understand oh, there's much more to this that's fulfilling. You don't have to be just stuck in acting.
Yes. Well, and we talked about it earlier, but like, I think people outside of Hollywood see movies that aren't great, and they wonder like, what idiot decided to make that bad movie?
Right.
And I think if you get under the hood more and you appreciate the monster collaboration that is required to make movies, you start to appreciate a little more why they don't all work out.
Right.
Totally.
Because every movie was greenlit with the hope and the dream that it's going to be the best movie ever.
That's right.
100%,
Right? When you're everybody looks at it and go, this is going to be the best movie ever.
Yeah.
And rarely they are, right? Like, so most of the time they're not. But it's because you need everybody to be perfect all the time, and
that's impossible.
That's almost impossible, right? So somebody's going to stumble, and it's going to influence the quality of the picture.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, the question is not why do they make so many bad movies. The question is how do they make good movies? You know, once you know how it happens.
Yeah.
Like if me and you want to go to lunch, we can figure out pretty quickly where it is. What if 10 of us want to go to lunch?
Oh my God,
You want Mexican?
that's such a
You
good
want sushi?
example.
You want Italian? I don't know. I mean, but I'm gluten free, and this guy's vegan, and you know, 2 hours later we're hungry and we haven't figured out where to go to lunch. Right?
That's why you
movie
need
making.
a director. That's why you need somebody to be like, we're doing this.
Yeah, the director's like,
movie making.
motherfucker,
Everyone's
we're going to get
hungry.
tacos. Get behind me, right? And that's how you really want it.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, and you need a leader too. You know, you need
gotta have a leader.
because if the leader isn't on set deciding what you're doing, somebody's going to fill that void. And the worst versions I've seen are where you got lots of bosses,
Yeah.
where it's not clear who's really running the show.
Yep.
It becomes a bit of a free for all, and you know, I don't know. Filmmaking might like authoritarianism a little bit.
Well, it requires
it's okay.
a power
Yeah.
Nothing
structure.
wrong with
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some directors are much more collaborative, open, and others are much more dictatorial. But whatever it is, someone has to be the person who's steering the ship.
Yes, and by the way, it could sometimes it should be and is mostly the director.
Yeah.
But there's instances where it's the producer,
Totally.
like Jerry Bruckheimer,
Yeah.
or the actor like Will Smith,
Yes.
or the studio. You know,
That's right.
It's so. But as long as everybody in the room agrees that there's the lead voice,
Yes.
then you got a shot.
Yeah.
But once there's like a power vacuum, movies don't seem to like that much.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
They're too big. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? They're so unwieldy. There's so much.
Yes.
It's just too many moving
You need
parts.
someone to cut through the noise and say, "This is what we're doing, guys."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for coming. You know, this is our first producer, and it's going to be so great for everyone to now start to see more about our industry, especially during this time of the strike. It's a good chance for people to re-examine what we do.
It's really smart, man. It's awesome. I can't wait to see who else you interview and what they have to say.
Oh yeah, we got great people. Yeah,
Gonna learn some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Acting is the most mysterious of all, by the way. So you guys have that one.
We talk plenty about acting as well.
You do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think there's just, the last podcast we released was just about how many misconceptions there are about what the acting process is. People just, I think, literally think people just learn lines and figure out how to say them in interesting ways. I
Yeah.
mean,
And they think theater.
Yeah.
They really don't understand. This is not theater.
Yeah.
What we do is totally not theater.
Yes, totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. This is
Thanks,
amazing.
John.
Yeah.
Really, I can't tell you how much I appreciate
Thank you, Coach.
it. I love
Thank you,
you.
Kay.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys.